Now who the f*** is this?
Back in 1977, Chrysler introduced their rear-drive mid-sized M-body platform with the Dodge Diplomat, shared with the Chrysler LeBaron. Although some thought the introduction of Chrysler's front-drive K-cars in 1981 would also mark the end of the old body-on-frame Diplomat, the Diplomat and its Chrysler and Plymouth twins continued to sell well, becoming the iconic police and government cars we all remember in TV and movies from the 80s. This is a story of the Dodge Diplomat and its Chrysler and Plymouth twins. This is my old car.
You guys are the dumbest bounty hunters I've ever seen! You couldn't even deliver a bottle of milk!
Thanks for the suggestions to review the Dodge Diplomat and its M-body platform mates, especially to this one viewer who has been asking for this episode almost every week. Hope you like it. Although Ford and GM definitely had a significant presence in the police car market in the 70s and 80s, growing up as a kid back then, I remember Chrysler as the most common maker of police cars. Ford definitely increased their market share by the 90s, as I talked about in my Ford Crown Victoria episode, but that was helped by the fact that Chrysler temporarily left the cop car business in 1989. In the 70s, Chrysler's Dodge division had some of the most iconic cop cars, arguably the most famous being the 1974 Dodge Monaco, thanks to its starring role in the Blues Brothers.
The car's got a lot of pickup.
And not just for the Bluesmobile, but for the 100 police cars destroyed in the movie. Most, if not all, were Dodge Monacos or Plymouth Gran Furies.
We're in a truck!
And if you watched any TV show in the 70s or 80s that had cop cars, chances are they were from Chrysler. But the Chrysler full-size C-body platform, on which the 70s Monaco was based, was on its way out by 1978. Its replacement was a smaller but still large St. Regis, based on the then-new Chrysler R-body. But thanks to strict fuel emission regulations, its detuned V8, paired with such a large heavy car, made the St. Regis only survive mostly on fleet sales, and many police departments were unimpressed, so much so that the St. Regis became one of the shortest model runs of any Dodge, ending just 4 years later. The model which would eventually become Chrysler's most popular cop car in the 80s.
Handsome devil, this Diplomat.
Started out as an attempt to improve Chrysler's reputation, thanks to an early 70s model line that had been plagued by recalls, and were rusting out far quicker than expected.
Unbelievable.
That platform was the Chrysler F-body, known best as the Dodge Aspen and Plymouth Volare.
Hi, guys.
These cars began with a 1976 model year, and by mid-77, the M-body was launched, sharing a lot of parts with the F-body, so much so that even some body panels were interchangeable. All three engine choices for the F-body, an inline slant 6 and two V8s, carried over to the M-body. But the new M-body wasn't intended to be a compact like the Aspen and Volare were, being 6 to 8 inches longer, depending on body style, which was offered in sedan, coupe, and wagon. The new M-body car for Dodge was called the Diplomat, a name which Dodge had last used as a model in 1954. The Chrysler LeBaron was introduced as a platform mate for the Dodge, with the most notable difference between the cars being in the front, where the Dodge had turn signals under the headlamps, versus the Chrysler had them reversed. As was always the case back then, the Dodge was intended to be the cheaper option, but the Diplomat could still be had with a Landau top on the coupe, and the wagon actually came standard with the fake wood sides, but could be optionally deleted. Starting in 1980, the Diplomat and the LeBaron began their second generation, still on the M-body, but with all new sheet metal for the sedans and coupes, whereas the wagon stayed unchanged from the doors rearward. They were all still over 200 inches long. And with the end of the St. Regis in 1981, the Diplomat and LeBaron became Chrysler's largest cars, and they remained body-on-frame and rear-wheel drive, despite the rest of the lineup like the upcoming K-cars that were moving to unibody and front-wheel drive.
I'm lifting this car, it must weigh 3,000 pounds!
The larger rear-drive cars still sold relatively well, and as a result, they survived the Chrysler bankruptcy in 1980.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come?
Although Dodge would continue to market its M-body offering as the Diplomat, by 1982, the Chrysler division moved the LeBaron over to the smaller K-car platform, and with the large R-body platform discontinued, the Chrysler New Yorker, which had been the platform mate of the R-body St. Regis, was now downsized and sharing the body, and almost the same look as the Diplomat. Chrysler also offered a higher-end trim called the New Yorker Fifth Avenue, and just to make things confusing, the New Yorker name was also later used on a smaller K-car model.
The first front-wheel drive Chrysler New Yorker, the most technologically advanced Chrysler ever built.
The Diplomat coupe and wagon were discontinued by 1982, and it was by this year that the police package for the Diplomat started to become more popular. Diplomats became more commonly used for government use, or as we often saw in the movies back then, the police detective's car.
Just tell me where the seatbelt is at!
The latter Diplomats could be distinguished from the Chrysler New Yorker from a distance, thanks to the Chrysler's Landau roof, and when sitting inside, you knew you were in the New Yorker thanks to its overly hyped Corinthian leather seats.
Corinthian leather? Of course, why not the best?
Although Diplomats were still available for non-fleet sales after 1982, Chrysler concentrated most of the marketing towards the New Yorker and the New Yorker Fifth Avenue. By 1984, the New Yorker portion of the name was dropped and instead just became the Fifth Avenue.
And I never argue with success.
Plymouth also moved its Gran Fury over to the M-body platform for 1982, where it became an almost identical twin to the Diplomat. So much so that from a distance, it was difficult to tell them apart. You had to look for the word Dodge or Plymouth above the grille. And of course, the Gran Fury was also offered with the police package. Although Plymouth offered a salon package for the Gran Fury, most Gran Furies sold as fleet sales. And although the fleet Gran Furies cost about the same as the Diplomat was, for whatever reason, the more popular model. Of course, Chrysler was not alone in offering a police package in the 80s, as both Ford and GM also offered their own. Ford had their LTD Crown Victoria, which evolved into just the Crown Victoria by 1992, and GM had their Chevrolet Caprice and Impala. Although all of the big three used their largest car platforms for their police packages, the Ford and GM options were at least 6 inches longer than the Diplomat, making the Diplomat a preferred option for some police departments that preferred a smaller and therefore a more maneuverable car.
I've almost been waiting for this.
The Diplomat, unlike Chrysler's old F-body cars, had also started to gain a following as being more dependable and simple to repair.
How fast are you going?
I can't tell, the speedometer's melting.
After 1983, the Slant 6 engine was dropped, and only one of the V8s, the 318 cubic inch version, remained available, although the police package upped it from a 2 to a 4-barrel carburetor. But the old Chrysler V8s, which by 1986 were now 10 years old, were starting to show their age and lack of refinement. They would soon be hit with a gas guzzler tax, and required premium gasoline. As the only remaining body-on-frame rear-wheel drive car in Chrysler's lineup, they were a world away from the direction Chrysler CEO Lee Iacocca wanted to take Chrysler into the 90s. However, the Diplomat, Gran Fury, and Fifth Avenue were still selling well enough that by 1987, Chrysler arranged a deal with American Motors to move the manufacturing of the M-body cars to AMC's Kenosha, Wisconsin plant. That plant had been building the Dodge Omni and Plymouth Horizon since 1985, and the Renault Alliance since 1982. But by 1987, the Alliance was ending production, and with no other AMC car to take its place, it now had extra capacity it needed to fill. With AMC in discussions to be bought out by Chrysler, Kenosha was retooled to build the 3 M-body cars alongside the Omni and Horizon. The move of the M-body cars to Kenosha brought reassurance to the workers, and in fact the whole town, that Chrysler would help prevent the plant from closing after the loss of the Renault Alliance production. In fact, Chrysler had originally stated that they would keep car production in Kenosha for at least the next 5 years. Sadly, that promise was broken less than a year later. By January of 1988, Chrysler announced its plan to halt car production in Kenosha by the end of the 1988 model run. Needless to say, the town of Kenosha, and the whole state of Wisconsin, will forever remember the day when Chrysler broke their promise to keep the plant open. With the production of M-body cars finished by 1989, the Diplomat and Gran Fury names were retired, never to be used again. But the Fifth Avenue name, and the old New Yorker name, came back in 1990 on Chrysler's new front-wheel drive C-body platform, which itself was derived from the original K-car.
Room for 6, dual electric mirrors, full of reclining seats, bumper cars.
Like many other cars of the 80s, the Diplomat was well used and often abused. So I'll bet that most under the age of 30 have probably only seen them at car shows, or in the junkyard. Although I'm sure I'll hear from those of you who disagree. Following Chrysler's bankruptcy, the Diplomat was considered a relic of a time Chrysler needed to put behind them. So the fact that it survived almost until the end of the decade is proof that there were still plenty of people back then who weren't ready to give them up. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you once owned a car from the 80s to mid-2000s that you rarely see today and would like it featured in a future episode, leave a reply in the comments or contact me at the email shown here. See you next time.